Well, the more things change, the more things stay the same. A McLaren 1-2 lockout carrying on from their dominance of having the best car towards the end of 2024. Remember, Lando won that race last year. It was a 1-2 lockout in that race as well. And now, again, all the preseason testing, all the hype, Hamilton, George, Mercedes, this, that, Liam Lawson, Red Bull, the McLaren 1-2. Here we are again, completely different cars, completely different philosophies, completely different drivers, not in the hands of McLaren. But, you know, it was just interesting to see that in some ways, nothing's really changed. But there is a lot that we need to talk about in this video. I'm going to give you guys an insight into the drivers, the differences between them, the mistakes as well. And we're also going to talk about how McLaren managed to get that done despite putting themselves under a lot of pressure in their first runs in Q3. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're going well. In this video, we're going to run through practice 3 briefly as possible, and then all the quali sessions as well. Like I say, I'm going to give you an insight into what happened. Okay, so just following on from the FP2 and the practice video yesterday, Lando was very glass half empty after that session in the post-practice interviews. It was very much like balance not where we wanted, and he was very down, whereas there was the likes of Hamilton really upbeat, Oscar quite upbeat as well. So it was just interesting to see, and I thought I'd call that out. I was like, there's nothing to be negative about. Like, the car was quick and it was just interesting to see. So I noted that down. Carlos and George both saying that when they put the C5 softest compound tire on, they couldn't extract the lap time that they thought they would be able to get out of it. And actually, in some cases, George Russell saying we actually went quicker on the medium than the C5 soft compound tire. This is after practice 2 yesterday. And that's exactly what we said in the live stream on Thursday. You've got the C5, one of the softest compounds available in the range. There's only one more softer than that, the C6, which you're going to bring to Monaco, I believe. And you've got the 35-degree weather combined. Is there a question there that's going to say, well, these tires are going to run out at the end of the lap? The answer to that question is yes. They saw that yesterday, and it was a real big issue today. I would argue that someone should have been trying a quick run on the medium compound tire, that's the C4, one step harder, just to see if it gives you a better overall lap time. Sure, you might lose a tenth in the first sector, maybe the second, but you might gain 3 or 4 in the final. In that slow speed end of the lap, I was really interested to see no one try that. We'll get onto that a little bit more later in this video as well. Okay, so let's talk about FP3, Ollie Bearman, the first one we need to talk about. He's put his rear left on the grass on the entry here, and it was kind of a really strange one, guys. It was like, after everything that we spoke about, obviously I didn't speak to him or the team. Everything I spoke to you guys about building a weekend and street circuits and minimizing mistakes and building confidence throughout the weekend, all he needed to do was have a clean session, and does the exact opposite of that. Very clumsy session. It shows the lack of attention to detail while he's driving out there, like not being totally in touch with the road surface, the car, not being present. Letting the car wander and drift as far left as that is really inexcusable. It also stacks up with a few of my other philosophies, which are that technical deficiencies, which is what we had yesterday in 11 and 12, lead you to self-doubt, mental mindset questions, mental implications. Am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Am I nervous? How can I recover? Who do I need to talk to? All of that, which he would have had to sleep on, which leads you back where you started, to more technical deficiencies, putting the wheel on the grass, etc. So look, it's tricky with the rookies, because I feel like it's 50-50 their fault, the team's fault. Yes, they're driving the car and they're making the mistakes. Like Ollie made the mistake in 9 and 10 chicane, made the mistake here at turn 11, now again today as well. But it's half the team's fault as well. They just throw these rookies in with no help, zero help, no driver, coach and mentor to set out the goals and objectives of the session. I'm not talking at this stage about someone who can interpret telemetry and tell you, oh, you're braking 5 meters too early here, and use this gear and downshift quicker and change the engine braking and diff. I'm not even talking about that side of things. I'm just talking about someone that can set the goals and objectives, give them a mentality for success. You know, you've got race engineer, strategy engineer, fuel engineer, tire engineer, aero engineer, every other engineer under the sun for the car. But the poor drivers, it's the fault of the teams, really, not bringing them in, saying, hey, Ollie, welcome to the team. You're going to be working with X person, and together you guys are going to be like team driver, if that makes sense. Like just everything, like I said. So it's 50-50. We saw Kimi Antonelli's crash in Monza last year. We saw Franco's plethora of crashes. Brazil crash, Baku crash. There was another one somewhere, escapes me. Vegas crash. So Antonelli, Colapinto, Bearman in the wall here twice, and then Bearman in the wall in Baku practice last year as well, joining Franco in the wall. So it's like we put them in, it's a sink or swim situation, and I feel like no athlete 18, 19, 20 years old should be in that position in the first instance. It's very difficult. Like they're going to learn the hardest way. You know, there's the hard way or the hardest way, and this is the hardest way. I feel kind of sorry for Ollie that Haas are not bringing in support to help him. Okay, so turn 12 was a real key point that I was looking out for. It's a fast, high-speed, loaded right-hander. The McLaren looked planted through there. Lewis's Ferrari looked planted through there as well. It was interesting to see Max having a few corrections through there, a few shakes of the head through there in practice as well. And Piastri with some over-rotation at turn 11 as well. That McLaren, when you add steering and you put it on too quickly, the front just pulls the car around super quick. So again, Piastri with the over rotation, we saw that yesterday at turn 6. We see that again today at turn 11 in the practice session. Now, something really critical, which I was waiting for someone to try and nobody tried it. Well, someone half tried it, but nobody tried it intentionally, was to use the exit curb available on the final corner. Now, if I just bring up the track map here, I can probably explain it a little bit better. Hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. So the final corner being turn 14 and the exit curb being over here, no one really sticking their left front on that exit curb and getting a better angle and better time of it down the pitch straight. Like I say, it was interesting to see not one person try it. If I just kind of draw it for you a little bit bigger, that is the run onto the pitch straight through here, the exit curb available here, and it kind of splits into, there's a curb and a bit of AstroTurf. No one really trying to put their left front over here. And I know there is a hard boundary, there's a wall here, but the advantages that you can get by doing this are very significant, because instead of you coming through, taking the apex in here, you've got the ability to open the steering wheel as you're putting your foot down. And that's so much more helpful, guys, when you're looking for traction coming onto the pitch straight. It's really helpful to be able to open the steering wheel a lot more than you would ordinarily if you're not aiming to use that exit curb, because it allows you to bury your foot harder in accordance with the friction circle. So we've spoken about that on this channel. Let me just quickly tell you about it. So the friction circle, it shouldn't in theory be used like this, but this is how I like to coach and use with it, is that you've got steering capacity left and right, braking capacity up ahead, and this is the one I'm interested in, throttle capacity down the bottom. Now, when you're turning through this right-hander, you're turning a little bit, and then you've got limited throttle capacity. And what I'm saying is if you can open that wheel just slightly, you find yourself more throttle capacity, that is here versus here. I'll draw those 2 points in red. So more steering, less capacity, more less. Whereas if you open the steering a little bit, you've got the most throttle capacity down here. So no one tried it except on my notes here, in the hands of Alex Albon, who just for some reason understeered and got onto it, and the car looked fine. So you've got to be receptive to those things like, hang on a minute, I understeered wide and ended up on this curb, but it was all good. Maybe that can be my line moving forward. Interesting to see no one exploring that, no one jotting that down. All right, here we go. Q1, the paying sessions. Let's have a look at the results and see who got kicked out. Kimi Antonelli got kicked out. One of the massive names to be out in Q1. Liam Lawson kicked out as well. Hulkenberg kicked out and out qualified by his rookie teammate. Ocon out. That car's obviously got no pace, and Bearman out as well with the gearbox issue. So look, it was a mistake from Kimi Antonelli at turn 6, which then broke the underside of his car, which then meant that, it was dragging through the rest of the lap. So mistakes are costly around Melbourne. We spoke about these yesterday. We said build yourself a weekend, complete the sessions, practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, Q1, Q2, Q3, race, etc. Bring home some points, and wherever that lands you, it lands you. It's much better than a mistake and being 16th. Got a long afternoon from there, Mr. Kimi Antonelli. Now, Liam Lawson, really interesting session. He missed practice 3 due to a PU issue, I believe. But in his qualifying session, he absolutely looked really lost. The first sector looked not too bad, fairly normal and fairly strong. And we're going to have a look at that in more detail in the telemetry. But it really went away from him at the end of the lap. We saw understeer at turn 10, oversteer at turn 11. We saw him go deep at turn 13. And so he's cooked those tires. Now, he hasn't had all of the experience from practice 3, like these guys at the top, the Norris, Russells, Verstappen, Leclerc, and so on, who've done that full session. They're aware of the tire overheating, etc. So he hasn't really been, he hasn't really been exposed to it. But I could see in his driving, unfortunately, this is the bad news if you're a Lawson fan, I could see in his driving the way he was using the steering at turn 3, turn 4, and turn 6 was not helpful for the front tires. Let me just come back to me for a second and explain what was going on. So the way Max turns the steering wheel is like perfect, harmonious simulator work. He turns in once and slowly, I'm talking about, say, turn 3, for example, here, turns in once and slowly adds the steering and just adds it very progressively. And it's all in one fluid motion, fluid movement of the steering wheel, as he comes out of the brakes, adding the steering in that beautiful harmonious relationship. Whereas what I saw Liam doing, unfortunately, turn 3, turn 4, and turn 6, was starting that, but then starting to turn the steering wheel, but then having a little bit of doubt and then really ramming it on in the second or mid to exit, second phase is what I want to say of adding that steering, not really getting the turning that he wants, and then thinking, I need to add a little bit more to get it to turn in. And that energy has then started to overheat the whole situation, all of the fronts and all the rears as well. If you don't believe me, have a look at, unfortunately, we don't have the steering traces, but have a look at the onboards if you get a chance. Have a look at the way Max adds that steering beautifully through turn 3, and have a look at the way Liam just felt the need to crank it on at one point. What I would say to Liam is just drive beautifully, drive elegantly, drive gracefully. The tires are very sensitive. You're on the C5 and you don't want to overheat them. You just want to go around, add the steering in a beautiful, it's the friction circle, right? Let's have a look at it once again, because this is what Max is doing beautifully. Just going to remove it and restart. Now we're down here at turn 3 and we're going to bring up our friction circle. And what Max is doing, braking and steering, as he comes out of the brakes, he adds steering. Come out of the brakes, add steering again. Come out of the brakes, add steering again until you're totally off the brakes. That's when you give it the full steer. So Max is moving beautifully around this edge of the circle, and the circle being harmonious, cyclical, smooth, like that. That's exactly how you want to drive. Whereas what Liam was doing was not necessarily coming out of the brakes, but he was, say, coming out of the brakes, adding the steering, but then the next time he was out of the brakes, adding good armfuls of steering, ending up outside of the friction circle. That's where you're sliding, right? So you can't actually end up outside of the friction circle in theory. I know that, but it's a visual representation that I want to show you, which means that he was actually doing too much work. So he's overheated the tires, but he also wasn't aware of it. Again, I'm not sure whether to come down hard on him for that, and I probably won't. I'll let him off for that, but that's just the reason why, guys. That's the reason why he was overheating those tires. Bearman, obviously, with the gearbox issue, a mega job from Alonso, who went fastest in 2 of the sectors at one point, first sector and second sector. And I thought Doohan did a really good job here as well to out-qualify Pierre in the first Q1 session. I thought was really good. Just not to mention that he's under so much pressure from Flavio, from Franco, from all that garbage talk. I just thought he did a really good job in the first session and the other sessions as well. We're going to get onto that. But just to see him there, like rock solid, 16.3, 16.3. And like I said, Bortoleto did a great job as well, 16.5, 16.5. So there's nothing in it with these teammates, but they're there. So it was interesting to see like Bortoleto, who's a rookie, Doohan, who's a rookie, Hadjar, who's a rookie, doing really well getting through. And then the Antonellis and Lawson, you know, finding themselves in a little bit of trouble and getting kicked out. Now, Lawson's trouble wasn't his fault, but I believe Antonelli's was. Now, look, guys, I just want to have a look at Verstappen Lawson as our telemetry comparison in Q1. Let's have a look here. I just want to see if the lap time did get away from Liam towards the end, as we saw, due to overheating the tires. So I'm looking at the delta here. And yes, there's a bit of a spike here. Where is this? Down at turn 3. So yeah, he has made a bit of a mistake at turn 3, but then I guess he's losing time all over the place, but it's these ones where it really runs away, because it could have been 0.6 if he just hung on to it for the mid lap, but it ends up being a full 1.1. So he's losing time all over the place, unfortunately. And I think it's how again, turn 3, right? So it's just how he's using the tires through the whole situation. Let's have a look and see if we can understand. Like I said, I would love to see the steering, but unfortunately we don't get it. And I guess the result of it all is that Max can get to full throttle earlier because the car's a lot more settled on the way in and through the corner. He's able to apply that pressure. But, you know, Lawson losing it all on the way in really as well. Max under braking, just being able to brake later, have that more confidence in the way he adds the steering lock. So look, unfortunately, I can't give you the full picture here. I don't have tire temperatures. I don't have steering angle, but from what I could see on the onboard, Liam was putting too much steering into that car too quickly, overheating all four tires. All right, let's take a look at the Q2 results and who got kicked out. So we had Hadjar kicked out, Alonso kicked out, Stroll, Doohan, and Bortoleto. Now, this was a really interesting session. So this is where now I'm starting to say, like, for example, the Ferrari drivers were losing 3 or 4 tenths in the final sector to Norris and Piastri. And that's where I'm thinking, like, they need to really give this medium a shot, because they were like hanging on first and second sectors, that is, and then losing in a third. Let's jump over to the telemetry to see if I can give you an insight into that Q2 session to show you where they were losing the time. So we've got Norris's 15.4 and Leclerc's 15.8. And yeah, it's just really running away in the back end of the lap. You see here, up to this point, this is through 9 and 10, or up to 9 and 10. It's only a tenth away, 1.7 tenths. But then by the end of the lap, it's 4. So that's where they really overheated the tires, the Ferraris, and there's a case to say that they need to try the medium compound tire. Now, Lewis Hamilton had a spin on the exit of turn 11, just getting the throttle on too hard, too early, while he had the steering on as well. And we spoke about the rear tires starting to go on the Ferrari as well. So that's turn 11 being the final sector towards the back end of the track. And Lewis Hamilton's spin, if I can just bring up the board again, Lewis Hamilton's spin means that Jack Doohan gets a yellow flag and he gets kicked out of the session. A big shame for Jack, because I want to see, he'll be our telemetry comparison for this one. I want to see how he was stacking up relative to Pierre Gasly, because like I said, in Q1, I thought Jack did a really good job. Bortoleto pushing too hard on the exit of turn 4. So he's just asking too much of the car. But look, he made it into Q2 and Hulkenberg didn't. So I feel like you got to throw caution to the wind at that point. Let's have a look at Doohan Gasly as well. Okay, so we need Gasly's 16.1 and Doohan's 16.8. So let's get those and see what happened here. Yeah, there you go. That's such a shame. So what I can see straight away is the delta actually in Doohan's favor early, in his favor again. Very borderline on the rundown to the fast 9 and 10. They're dead equal going into turn 9 and 10. Coming out of 9 and 10, they're dead equal again. And he has to lift for the yellow flag on the entry braking into turn 11. That's such a shame. I really feel like Doohan was on it. And like, I just want to highlight to you guys that he was on it the whole day and he deserved so much more than what he got. So I actually feel a bit sad for him, a bit heartbroken. Where is he kicking off here? So he's off 14th. It's going to be tough from there. And he deserved to be off, around where Gasly is, either 9, 10 or 11. So it's such a shame there for Doohan, but this telemetry highlights to you that he was bang on up to that point. Okay, so the Q3 results on the screen in front of you. Now look, in the first runs, both McLaren drivers made pretty substantial errors. Turn 3, Oscar Piastri hits the curb on his first run, and then he goes wide in the second last corner as well and outbrakes himself at turn 13. And then Norris gets his lap time deleted for track limits at turn 4. Now, I haven't seen the onboard at turn 4, but I suspect when Lando turns in, the front grip of the McLaren pulls the rear end around as well, gets a bit of oversteer, has to correct, and that pushes him outside of track limits. So it was actually very impressive for the McLaren boys to come out one run to show it off under super pressure, the whole of Melbourne breathing down their neck, and both of them did outstanding laps. We're going to have a look at them in the telemetry, but I just take my hat off to both the drivers for getting that done under massive pressure despite their mistakes in their first runs. I thought it was also a mega job by Albon in P6 and Yuki Tsunoda in P5 as well. But it's interesting to note those two also had the best of the track conditions. They were last over the line. It was Alex who came over second last, and it was Tsunoda who came over last. And with the temperature cooling off in the afternoon, that was definitely the play. We know we've been struggling with overheating rear tyres in the final sector. So if you could go as late as possible, which these two guys did, I think there was certainly lap time in it. Now look guys, it was super tight. The run down to 9 and 10, they both got their foots flat here. There's nothing in it, less than 100th of a second. They go through the fast 9 and 10. Piastri actually gets the upper hand in there, but then Lando gets better exit speed. So it's just going above and beyond the delta. In the end, it's won by Lando in the final corner. And this is the squirt, guys, between the second last corner and last corner. Remember, there's a final lift here through the last corner. And I'm just going to move my mouse away for a sec. But there's a final lift here in the last corner, and then they get on the throttle for the final time. But before that, it's the squirt between the two corners where Lando's actually stolen the delta in his favor. Just getting on throttle, probably getting the steering wheel straighter, giving that McLaren a bit of a harder squirt, and bang, the delta comes in his favor, and the rest is history. So good job, Lando. That's details there. That's brave. That's risky as well at low speed and low downforce. So yeah, kudos to Lando. Good job, but good job by both McLaren drivers, like I say, to get it done under pressure. All right, looking ahead, what do we need to talk about from here? Look, I said at the start of this video, the more things change, the more things seem to stay the same. What does that mean? McLarens are on pole, but we've got rain tomorrow, big rain coming. And this is where the separation between champions and good drivers generally occurs, not just in rain, but in adverse circumstances, in rain, in safety cars, in strategy, in red flags, in managing rear tire life, in overtaking in the rain, in minimizing mistakes, in attention span, in concentration. Those guys are all the areas we refer to as the tactical side of driver preparation. So you got physical, mental, technical, and tactical. Everything that was being assessed here was on the mental side in qualifying, but mostly also on the technical side. Your technique, right? Exactly what Lando demonstrated between the last and second last corners, turn 13 and turn 14. But now it's a completely different assessment tomorrow. It's going to be on the tactical side. How well can you find a way to get it done? Remember, my definition of champion is that they find a way to get it done regardless of the situation. If they have a headache, if the car is not quite right, if the track conditions, if they got a yellow flag, if it starts raining, if they didn't manage to do it, like if even notwithstanding the conditions that they're faced, they find a way to bring the car home and get it done. That's the beautiful thing about watching champions at work, is that just after the 60 laps, they're there taking the checkered flag first. So that being said, what do? Do you say then Max is going to win this one? Well, look, he's starting third. He's only got to sit there and just watch and learn and play a better strategy and find the wet lines and do that sort of thing. He's only got to get a good launch, and he's only got to do all of the Max things and get it done. So look, I wouldn't bet against him to get it done. But let's see if Lando's learned. Lando's been coming out saying, I'm a more complete driver. I've learned a lot from last season. I feel like I'm ready to compete for a championship. This will be the proof. I haven't seen anything from it. Like a lights to flag victory in Abu Dhabi does not show me that he's a more complete driver or he's learned anything. It's going to be tomorrow. We're going to see tomorrow. If he can keep his head do a lights to flag in the rain and get this one done with all of 400,000 people breathing down his neck at Melbourne, then that's, one on the list as being proof that he can get it done under pressure. But we'll definitely be watching the start. And what does he need to do? As we always say, shoot across to the inside, defend the inside braking zone at turn 1 and turn 3. We've seen Oscar go around him in Monza last year, second chicane, got it done around the outside. Lando needs to defend the position a lot better, hit his braking points and not give Oscar any opportunity, and then settle in from there and start to look after the tyres and manage the strategy. That's what needs to be done. That's the exam question. You guys let me know in the comment section whether or not you think Lando has the capability and ability to get this done, notwithstanding all of the adversity that is going to be faced tomorrow in the rain, yellow flags, red flags, safety cars, restarts, managing the rear tyres in the wet, not making mistakes. It's going to be a big ask. But I would argue even if you don't make a single mistake and you come home P2 or P3, that's a win, guys. Move on to the next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, had a question or comment, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, like and subscribe to this channel for the race review tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.